All right, good morning, friends. 11:48. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Tuesday to all of you. We have a busy week ahead of us. This week we have FOMC Wednesday, 1900. So, um, as mentioned previously, we have a new Fed chair. It's no more Powell. It's Welsh. What's his name? Can't remember his name, but we got a new Fed. Okay, and this is gonna be huge, by the way. Okay. So, regards to that, let's get back to the charts. We know what has happened over here. Yesterday's shorts off the 1.27 from London high and London low. New York runs into the 1.27 at 15.15. The next candle respects the higher area. Push. Taps the 1.18. Push. Now, what does it push into? So let's have a look, because yesterday, Asia's first low, 145, 2 o'clock. Flat bodies to the downside. Downside breaches left behind, so unresolved inventory. London opens up now. There wasn't any London delta, so Asia's low remains protected. The inverse is not going to happen. However, the force raid will happen because Asia has left unresolved inventory. So upside remains restricted. Okay? Upside remains restricted because London's discovery is to the downside. Okay? If it was the other way around, where we've got Asia up and we've got a London delta, then London's discovery would be to the upside. But in this scenario, it's a non-delta. So because London has to, not just London, but it's going to be a multi-session continuation, in order for that to happen, so in order for London and New York to work together to carry the price, simply because it's a non-delta play, the discovery is to the downside. Okay? And when the discovery is to the downside, the initial mover, which is Asia, its low remains protected. Okay? So, regards to that, I thought I'd just put it out there for all of you to keep an eye on. Now, London's first high sits at 9:30, 9:45. First low sits at 9:45 and 10 o'clock. So if we just line the crosser up to the low area of the first high, we didn't get any London downside breaches below the first high lower area. So what New York does here is New York opens up, runs into the 1.18, 1.27 at 15.15. If you get the fib from London high, London low, you can see 15.15 breaks above the 1.27, and even over here as well, 14.30. We come lower, the session then prints its first low, 1600, 16.15, flat bodies to the downside, 2 candles. Now, this candle is also the delta candle. Okay, but let's put delta to the side. Let's look at the sequence here. Now, when the first low is printed, we need 2 breaches below the first low. So the first low is over here. Raw pure price action, mechanical approach. We're going based off first high, first low, breach 1, breach 2 to the upside and downside. So breach 1 and breach 2 are pending. Cool. So what New York does, okay, the money comes off the 1.27. New York prints the first low. We get that breach 1, 17.15. We get the breach 2, 17.30. Now the breach 2 brings New York session closer towards London's first high lower area. Like I said, downside breaches below the first high were pending. So New York prints that breach 1 over here, 6.30. It prints the breach 2 over here, 8.30. So we get the breach 1, 6.30, breach 2, 8.30. Cool. So that completes London's inventory. The downside breaches, that New York prints completes the sequence for the first low over here, 1600 and 16.15. Now, the session didn't print its first high up until 1945 plus 8 o'clock. 2 candles, flat bodies to the upside. You have to zoom in every single day. And if you zoom in, you can see uneven, flat bodies to the upside. So we get the first high, which is New York's first high. Now, New York's first high, downside breaches were pending as well. So if we line the crosshair up, breach 1, 8:30, breach 2, 9 o'clock. Now, New York runs out of time, okay? But let me tell you something. New York's upside breaches were pending above the first high. Cool? This area here, excess candle 1, excess candle 2, excess candle 3. Pretty much 3 drives in reverse. This is where a lot of money sits, okay? Because let's not forget, Asia's downside breaches are pending below the first low. Okay, we cannot forget that. We need the breaches below the first low. So New York leaves upside breaches behind. So what does Asia do? Asia opens up. Asia prints that breach 1 at 4:30. And London prints that breach 2 on behalf of New York at 8:45. So that completes New York's inventory partially. The first low, which sits over here at 1600 and 1615, the upside breaches are still pending above the first low. So let's not forget that. Okay, so we'll come back to that later on. Right now, the main focus here is simply looking at Asia and London inverse. Okay, for today. We also need to look at Asian session to see where its first high and first low is. So let's do that because I've already, covered yesterday's Asian session, yesterday's London session, and New York. Okay, the only upside unresolved inventory sits above New York's first low, but we'll come back to that later on as this has more priority, Asia's first low. So in order to understand if either the current session or New York is going to run into New York's first low and print those breaches above, or is it going to run into Asia's first low and print 2 breaches below? So that's the play here right now, okay? Just because the current market is closer towards New York's first low doesn't mean it's going to run there, okay, and complete that. We need to first look at Asia and then the current session to see what's really left behind over here in this current time and situation that we have here. So let's look at Asia, okay? So we've got New York and Asia inverse, but we need Asia's delta and Asia's discovery. So in order to move into Asia's delta and discovery, we need to mark out the first low and the first high. So session opens up at 12 o'clock. Let's have a look. Let's see if we have, so we have Asia's first low over here. 23:45, 12 o'clock. 2 candles, flat bodies to the downside. So Asia prints its first low, first thing first. Cool. Now, looking at this, I can tell you right now, this is the first low here, yeah? 23:45, 12 o'clock, lower area. We have breach 1, 115. So now where is the breach 2? We don't have breach 2. Does that make sense? Breach 1 sits at 115. We don't have breach 2. So we need breach 2 in order for price to go higher. Cool. First low, 23:45, 12 o'clock, upside breaches, 12:30 and 1:45. So now let's identify where the first high is. So that's session's first low and session's first high. Let's have a look. You have to go candle by candle. There you go, here. Cool. 2 o'clock, 2:15. Line the crosshair up to the lower area. Breach 1, 2:30. And then we get that breach 2 at 3 o'clock. Cool. So downside breach is complete for the first high. But for the first low, unresolved. We need breach 2 below the first low. We have the breach 1, but we need breach 2. We haven't got that breach 2 yet. So Asia's inventory is unresolved. Simply put. We can use Asia high, Asia low. Have a look and see what's really happening over here. So which candle broke above the 1.27? This candle, 9:15. And this candle, 10:30. So let's leave that for a second. And let's open the ATAS platform and see if we have any Asian delta. Okay. So let's have a look. because all we need to do is just get closer and closer to the market truth. That's all we need to do. We don't need to predict or even, you know, try and figure out where the market's going to go. You know, that's going to be revealed in due time. So in order for us to identify Asia's delta, previous sessions direction is to the downside, so we need a bullish candle with bearish delta, which needs to sit inside the first low. Bullish candle, bearish delta. So let's have a look here. 12 o'clock. Bullish candle, negative delta, minus 195. So we have 12 o'clock Asian delta right at the open. Very important. Okay. Now, same concept. Nothing really changes. You see how we, when we look at Asia and London delta inverse. If I just flip this around, if I just show you, cool. We've got New York and Asia's delta inverse play. We have the delta here, okay. The reason why I'm flipping the charts because it's easier for those that are very comfortable with cells, so you can read this in that manner. Or if I just flip it back to, default. We've got New York to the downside. Now, in order for Asia or even London and New York to take out this, so, New York and Asia inverse, price needs to revisit the delta candle once all the breaches have been printed. So right now, the breaches have not been printed. Okay, the first low prints breach 1, but the breach 2 is missing. Now that is where the key is. Okay, this is discovery, Asia discovery, London discovery. Cool. So now we know the upside is limited and New York's high remains protected, because price cannot simply raid New York high without completing Asia's breaches. Cool. So that is that. Now let's move over to London session and see if we are going to have some sort of Asia and London inverse, because that's how the market going to play out. In order for that final breach to be printed, Asia sets itself up for that Asia and London, sort of, the word I would use is facilitating, the these levels for these guys, bids and asks. The delta will tell us if the move is true. So London's first high sits over here. I've already identified London's first high. 8:15, 8:30, first high sits over here. Cool. London's first low sits at 8:30 and 8:45. Flat bodies to the upside, flat bodies to the downside. We need downside breaches, obviously, in order for price to continue pushing higher. So in this scenario, because we already have the first high, let's open the ATAS platform and see if we have any London delta. So the requirement here, very simple. Previous session is to the upside. The current session needs to rotate. So we are looking for a bearish candle with bullish delta, which needs to sit inside the first high, first low, or the downside breaches. So the first high sits at 8:15. We need a bearish candle with bullish delta. This is a bearish candle, but it's got bearish delta. Cannot use that. Okay, so at the moment, we don't have any delta, because the first high is a bullish candle, bearish candle. First low is a bearish candle and a bullish candle. But this bearish candle has negative delta. We need bearish candle with bullish delta. We need buy side liquidity. So we don't have that here, okay? Because the upside breaches cannot be used to, the upside breaches don't meet the requirements. It has to be a bearish candle with bullish delta. Does that make sense? So we don't have London's delta as of yet. Cool. So the first high, lower area, breach 1 and breach 2 is pending. The first low, higher area, breach 1 and breach 2, lower breaches are pending. The upside breaches have been printed. So the first high, 8:15, 8:30, line the crosshair up, breach 1, 8:45, breach 2, 9 o'clock. First low, 8:30, 8:45, line the crosshair up, breach 1, 9 o'clock, breach 2, 9:15. Cool. Now this here, XS1, all of this is excess. So you want to be waiting for, so the first low here, 8:30, 8:45, breach 1, breach 2, line the crosshair up to the candle that breaks the breach 2, which is this candle, 9:45. Okay, we need a closure below. Well, to be honest, shorts are valid from here. Shorts are valid from here into London's first low and London's first high low area, because we need downside breaches, simply put. Cool. So I'm gonna leave that there. And yeah, this is how it is, my friends. Look, it's all mechanical. You guys can see, yesterday's play worked out perfectly. I know we got stopped out here. Don't get me wrong. We did get stopped out. Yeah. But that's totally fine. The move came into light. And I also posted a personal trade that I took yesterday from here, from the 1.27 fib right here, New York open. New York pushes into the 1.27. We get the first low, breach 1, breach 2, higher area, tapped, push into London's unresolved inventory, which simply is the downside breaches that were left behind. That's it. That's all it is, my friends. Nothing else. Keep it mechanical, keep it simple, don't really complicate it. Okay? A session needs to print first high, first low. Okay? The first two candles with the flat bodies, you need to make sure you're on you are on the Owanda broker feed, and you have the no gap candle added. Okay, first two candles with flat bodies. If it's the first high, the flat bodies needs to be facing to the upside. If it's the first low, first two candles with flat bodies facing to the downside. Keep it simple. Flat bodies facing to the upside. Okay, now first high, yeah, first high should print two breaches above and below. First low should print two breaches above and below. Cool. Very, very simple. Don't complicate it. Once you understand that concept, you will see how even just the first low itself, look at this over here, the first high, 8:15, 8:30. Once the first high was printed, the second candle, which belongs to the first high over here, was used to push price higher. So in itself, these are very strong anchoring points, because these are micro session structures. They are the moving needle. You have the session low, session high, which is the highest point of that session and the lowest point of that session. But when you look at the first low, which is when the inventory sort of, your shop is open. When you get the first low printed, the shop is open. Okay, now the shop needs to auction its highest point and its lowest point. Does that make sense? If the previous session hasn't printed, certain breaches, then the next session will chase them. Okay, and all you have to do is simply read the structure as you go along. Okay, and when it comes to using the fib, if the previous session is to the upside, you get the fib from the high to the low, and you take trades based off the reversal from the 1.18, 1.27, and you target the 50 level. Always go based off inverse when it comes down to targeting. Sorry, when it comes down to taking trades. When you want to take continuations, as an example, yeah, this is a perfect example of multi-session continuation. We have New York to the downside. Asia's pullback, London's pullback is a play, yeah, of continuation towards here. Monday's Asia's first low. Does that make sense? So if you see price drop, yeah, don't be surprised, So it's gonna be so you've got multi-session inverses, you've got multi-session continuations, and what I'll do, I'll just continue doing these daily drop offs, and you are going to gain much more clarity on a daily basis. So stay with me as we have to trade like this. Okay, we have to trade like this. We have to make sure we are mechanical. The moment you start catching yourself trying to project a huge move to the upside or to the downside, just look at the current session. What is it doing? Where is the first low? Where is the first high? You know, wait for the session to close, mark the standard low, standard high, wait for New York to open, wait for New York to print its first low, first high, breaches, and then, it's like clockwork. Literally, it's like clockwork. So, volume's going to step in at 12:30 onwards over here. And 1300 NY cash desk opens. 13:30 NY cash desk is fully open. 1400 London and New York handover overlap period. 14:30 NYSE opens. 1500 gold fix. So you will see how all of this plays out. And the move from here to here, by the way, I am in shorts. I'm in shorts from 4345. So 4345, and I'm simply targeting current session's downside breaches for the time being, which should bring the current market towards 4320s, 4316, back into Asia's delta, and then the handover from London to New York, it should simply be a slip, okay, and the market would just slip into here, Asia's low, first low, Asia's first low, Asia's standard low, two different things, okay. The first low is much more powerful and it's actually responsive, very, very responsive in comparison to Asia's standard low, okay? Because Asia's standard low, doesn't really belong to the overall Asian auction market sort of period that happens, Asia's standard low is just the lowest point in which Asia printed, okay? It's not the actual inventory low. The actual inventory low is Asia's first low. 2 candles, flat bodies facing to the downside, okay? So that's that. Cool. So let's move on and let's see what the day brings for us.